It took me 3 years of being married to Leo Vance to understand that he'd only asked me to be his wife to fulfill a promise he'd made to my father. He wasn't in love with me. The person he loved was Sophie, the girl he grew up with, his childhood friend. Because I was his wife, he wasn't there when Sophie was in danger, and he didn't get the news in time. The night of her funeral, Leo got incredibly drunk. His eyes were filled with a deep-seated anger as he looked at me and said, "Maya, if your father hadn't made me feel obligated to marry you, Sophie wouldn't have died. Do you have any idea what I was thinking on our wedding day?" His voice was sharp and cruel. "I was thinking that if you died, maybe I wouldn't have to feel so burdened anymore." He hated me. Every word he spoke was like a knife twisting in my heart, pulling me down into a spiral of despair. But later, when I did become seriously ill and was close to death, he sold every asset he had to afford my medical care. He stayed by my hospital bed, his face a mask of agony, begging me to just live a little longer. "Maya," he whispered, "I never wanted you to die. I just didn't know what to do. Your father, my mentor, asked me to look after you on his deathbed. But I've loved Sophie for so many years. No matter what I chose, I was going to let someone down." I closed my eyes, feeling completely drained. Just as I was about to lose consciousness, I heard his final desperate words. "If we get another chance, Maya, please let me be with the person I really love." My heart broke in that last moment. When I opened my eyes again, I was somehow back on the day Leo told me he was going to marry me. "You have to stay strong," a voice said, and someone hugged me, their shoulders shaking with sobs. I stood there, completely still, not understanding what was happening. Then I looked up and saw the tombstone in front of me. It all came rushing back. I had returned. I was reborn on the day of my father's funeral. Looking at the photograph on the gravestone, my eyes instantly welled up with tears that streamed down my face. A senior classmate of mine, her own eyes red and puffy, saw me crying and started to cry again herself. She took out a tissue to gently wipe my cheeks, her voice thick with emotion. "Maya, you're Professor Hayes' only child. You have to be strong. He can only rest easy if you live a good life." I nodded, still crying, and wiped at my own tears. I turned my head and saw Leo Vance standing there, staring at the tombstone. He was wearing a black suit, standing perfectly still with a cold, composed expression. To anyone else, he looked like a man devastated by grief. I used to think so too. My dad had been Leo's biggest supporter when he had nothing, paying for his college, having him over for dinner, and investing so much in his career. Many of my classmates had complained to my dad that he was showing favoritism, and even his colleagues said he treated Leo like a son. So it was natural for me to believe that after me, Leo was the most heartbroken person here. But after everything that happened in my previous life, I knew better. Leo's expression that day, while sad, was more confused and pained than truly grief-stricken. I knew exactly why. On his deathbed, my father had called Leo into his room and asked him to take care of me. My mother died when I was little, so my dad raised me all by himself. When the accident happened, his biggest worry was me. With no other options and no time, Leo had simply nodded and agreed. The debt he felt he owed my father was immense. Refusing would have been a betrayal he couldn't live with. But as it turned out, agreeing didn't make him feel any better because he didn't love me. He loved Sophie. Everything he had worked for, all the long nights studying, was to build a future for her, to be able to proudly ask her to marry him. He was on the verge of going back to do just that when my father placed my future in his hands. It was a choice that tore him apart. Leo had confessed all of this to me during a drunken rage in our past life. Even thinking about it now made my chest ache. Eventually, Leo noticed me watching him. A flicker of panic crossed his eyes before he quickly composed himself and walked over to me. He probably assumed I was just overwhelmed with grief. After a moment of silence, as if he'd made a firm decision, he said, "Don't be scared, Maya, you still have me. Marry me and I'll take care of you from now on." In my past life, hearing those words, which sounded so much like a declaration of love, made me think Leo had feelings for me. My father had just died, and I was drowning in sorrow and feeling completely lost. When the man I had secretly admired for years said that to me, how could I refuse? I was desperate for something to hold on to, and Leo was the one person I had always trusted. Crying, I had thrown myself into his arms and whispered, "You're all I have left." Leo had just patted my back silently, saying nothing more. We didn't have a wedding ceremony since it was right after my father's funeral. We just went and registered our marriage. Leo told me he'd make it up to me in a few years with a proper wedding, but I didn't mind. All I wanted was a peaceful, happy home. But I never even got that small wish. The third time Leo flinched away from my touch, I finally had to ask him, "Did you marry me because you actually like me?" He pulled me into a hug, flustered. "Maya, don't think too much. You know my background. I'm just not used to being so physically close with people." Even though he tried to explain it away, a seed of doubt had been planted in my heart. I couldn't help but feel that it wasn't about a general discomfort with intimacy, but a discomfort with me. It wasn't until his childhood love, Sophie, died in a fire that I finally understood who he truly loved. By then, we had been married for almost 3 years. While we weren't a clingy couple, our life had been stable. So when I suddenly learned the truth, it would be a lie to say it didn't hurt. But Sophie was gone, and I told myself that we had to move on, that I couldn't get stuck on it. The night of Sophie's funeral, Leo came home completely drunk, stumbling through the door. I tried to remain calm and made him some soup to help him sober up, telling him not to be so upset. But he suddenly slapped the bowl out of my hands. The hot soup splashed onto my skin, leaving an angry red mark on the back of my hand. The floor was a mess of shattered ceramic and soup. I just stood there, shocked, looking up at him. He was like a stranger. The gentle man I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone who stared at me with pure hatred. "Maya Hayes, if your dad hadn't guilted me into this marriage, Sophie wouldn't be dead. I would have married her. I would have treasured her for the rest of my life. Do you know what I was thinking when I married you?" His voice shook with rage. "I was thinking that if you died too, maybe I wouldn't have to carry this weight anymore." He hated my father for entrusting me to him, and he hated me for marrying him and causing him to miss his chance with Sophie forever. Even in my final moments in my past life, he had looked at me with a tormented expression and begged me, if there was a next life, to let him be with the one he truly loved. That pained, regretful Leo and the determined man standing before me now seemed to merge in my mind. I looked at him and slowly shook my head. "Leo, please don't joke about this. I'm an adult. I can take care of myself." In the past, I had always secretly called him by his full name in an affectionate way, but saying it now with such formality made the space between us feel cold and vast. Leo's expression tightened. He looked at me, surprised and confused, as if he couldn't understand my sudden distance. "Maya, we've known each other for years. You don't have to be so formal. Your father was so good to me. Now that he's gone, it's only right that I take care of you for him." I thought he would be relieved that I had gently refused him. I didn't expect him to insist. Something felt off. This time, I was more direct. "Leo, you really don't have to. My father helped you because he saw your potential and wanted you to have a good future. You don't owe me anything. Taking care of me is not your responsibility or your duty." I had genuinely liked Leo Vance once. He was ambitious, hardworking, and considerate. It was easy to fall for someone like him. But that didn't mean I had to cling to him or demand he be with me. I sighed to myself, especially now that I knew he didn't love me. I couldn't possibly agree. But when Leo heard my words, he didn't look relieved or happy to be let off the hook. Instead, he just stared at me, bewildered, as if he truly didn't understand. "Maya, didn't you like me?" he finally asked, the question hanging awkwardly in the air as if he'd been wanting to ask for a long time. I looked at him quietly. So he knew all along that I had feelings for him. No wonder he had hated me so much in our past life and accused my father of forcing him to repay a debt with marriage. Before Leo had entered the hospital room that day, my father had called me in first. He gave me the family's assets and, with tears in his eyes, told me I had to learn to be strong. When I left the room, I was crying so hard I could barely see. Through my blurry vision, I saw Leo push the door open and go in. I never saw his expression when he came out, but thinking about it now, he must have thought my father and I had planned it all. That's why my father had entrusted me to him. Leo Vance's entire college education was paid for by my dad. He was a frequent guest in our home for dinner, and even his great job was secured through my father's help. Our family had done so much for him, but in his mind, all those years of kindness were just a scheme with a hidden agenda. He thought it was all a trap to tie him down. A wave of disgust, stronger than anything I'd ever felt, washed over me. Looking at Leo again, the ache in my chest lessened. I stared at him with a calm expression, my voice even more distant than before. When I was younger and more naive, I did like you, Leo, but that's in the past. Please don't read too much into it. I gave a faint, polite smile. You're an exceptional person, and I'm sure you have many wonderful women around you. I'm not one of them. Even though it still bothered me to know how Leo had thought of me and my father, I knew there was no point in trying to explain. Since I had a chance to start over, it was better to make a clean break. Let him go marry his Sophie, and I would live my own life. From now on, we would have nothing to do with each other. Leo clearly hadn't expected me to reject him so thoroughly. When I said, when I was younger and more naive, his brow furrowed and a hint of annoyance flashed in his eyes. But then, probably thinking of Sophie waiting for him, his expression returned to normal. Looks like I was just overthinking things, he said with a light laugh. Forget I said anything. If you ever need help with anything, don't hesitate to ask. I'll do what I can. Leo smiled easily, and all the pain and conflict in his eyes vanished. Seeing his expression, I finally felt a sense of relief. In our previous life, after Sophie died, Leo had lost all control and never treated me with any kindness. That's when I saw how much he had loved her. A moment ago, when he seemed so affected by my rejection, I thought it was strange. But now I understood. It was all in my head. Leo loved Sophie deeply. Why would he be upset just because I turned him down? Of course he wouldn't be. I just replied with a simple, okay, and didn't look at him again. After everyone else had gone, I stepped forward and knelt, bowing 3 times before my father's grave. I never believed my father had forced Leo to repay him with marriage. When Leo, who came from a small, poor town, got into the university where my dad taught, my dad came home and told me all about him. He said Leo's father had passed away when he was young, and his mother worked multiple jobs just to raise him and send him to school. It was a hard-won opportunity, but right after he started college, his mother got sick. Leo had to find a way to pay for tuition while also taking care of her, and he couldn't manage both. My father, worried he would have to drop out, talked to Leo and then organized a fundraiser for him. Since my dad started it, he gave the largest donation, 50,000 yuan, which covered all of Leo's mother's medical bills. After that, my father paid for Leo's tuition for all 4 years. He once told me, as a teacher, I can't just stand by and watch a good student be forced into a corner. A man like that, even on his deathbed, wouldn't use kindness as a weapon. I sighed softly. Even if Leo had felt guilty and agreed to the marriage, he could have handled it differently. He could have just told me the truth. I wouldn't have clung to him. But he stayed silent, regretting his choice in his heart while saying nothing to me. It wasn't until our 3rd year of marriage that I learned he had loved someone else all along. I had spent nearly 3 years with a man whose heart was somewhere else, all the while believing our feelings were mutual. What a joke. Looking at my father's kind, smiling face on the gravestone, I wiped my eyes and whispered, Dad, I know you were thinking about my future when you entrusted me to Leo. But he already has someone else in his heart. He's not someone I can rely on. But don't worry, I'm strong. I'll be fine by myself. Behind me, not far away, Leo stood frozen. He had come back without me realizing it and was now staring at me, completely shocked. He hadn't expected me to have overheard the conversation between him and my dad. He certainly hadn't expected me to know he loved someone else. A whirlwind of emotions crossed his face. He lifted his foot, as if to come and comfort me, but then stopped. He probably thought that if I was speaking with such sadness, it meant I still had feelings for him. If he came closer now, he was afraid I might get attached. Thinking of the bright, happy girl waiting for him, his Sophie, Leo ultimately turned and walked away. My dad had asked for his opinion before entrusting me to him, and now Leo had asked me, and I had told him I didn't need him. He probably figured that he would help me in the future if he could, but his heart still belonged to the one he truly loved. I had no idea Leo had returned for a moment. After speaking to my father's grave for a while, I went home. The house was quiet and empty, almost suffocatingly so. In my last life, after my father passed, I had hated coming home to an empty house. But I realized now that wanting company didn't mean I had to be married. I gave the house a thorough cleaning, carefully setting up my father's portrait and his things. Then, I went to a pet store. After looking around for a while, I bought a lively and affectionate golden retriever puppy. I got a crate, toys, dog food, and everything else he would need. The little guy was full of life and loved being near me. I started taking him for walks every day, and slowly my mood started to lift. "Is that your new dog, Maya?" a familiar voice asked. The smile on my face faded a little as I looked up. A short distance away stood Leo Vance. I hadn't seen him for a few days. Next to him was a girl in an oversized t-shirt and black pants. When Leo called my name, she glanced over with a curious look. I had seen her picture in my past life, so I knew right away it was Sophie Harper, Leo's childhood sweetheart. I looked away from them and gave Leo a polite, distant smile. "Yeah, I just got him a few days ago." I didn't feel like making small talk and was about to make an excuse to leave when Sophie stepped forward. "I saw you walking this way. Do you live around here too?" she asked with a warm, friendly expression that caught me by surprise. "Yes, I live just up ahead," I replied. It was only after I said it that I realized what I had implied. What did she mean here too? I looked at Leo, who was walking in the same direction, and a feeling of unease started to grow. But Sophie didn't seem to notice anything strange. She smiled brightly and said, "That's such a coincidence. We just bought a new apartment in this building. Since you already know Leo, it'll be nice to have a familiar face around. We can all look out for each other." Leo stopped in front of me, clearly happy with this arrangement. Sophie's right. Since we're neighbors now, it'll be easier to help each other out. He looked pleased, but I was just frustrated. I had said all those things to him precisely because I wanted us to go our separate ways. I never thought that after getting with Sophie, he would move into my building instead of moving away. Now we'd be running into each other all the time. My smile started to feel forced. Leo, who had been watching me, noticed the change immediately. Afraid I might get jealous and cause problems for Sophie, he quickly added, "Sophie is really kind and easygoing. If you ever need anything, you can just ask us." The way he looked at me, so guarded and cautious, was suddenly very strange. He knew I lived here, yet he still brought Sophie to buy a place in the same building, and now he was acting like he thought I was going to bully her. The more I thought about it, the more I disliked the situation. I gave a non-committal answer, made an excuse, and took my puppy home. This apartment was a gift from my father when I started college. I had lived here for 5 or 6 years and was very attached to it. I wasn't going to move just because of Leo. Whatever his reasons were for buying a unit here, it was done. I couldn't make him leave. So I just continued my daily routine of walking the dog. Leo's new apartment was already furnished, and within a couple of days, he and Sophie moved in. The day they moved, they made a point to stop by my place. "Maya, Sophie and I are getting engaged soon," Leo said, holding her hand while offering me a red invitation with his other. "This is the invitation. We'd really like for you to be there." Sophie leaned against his shoulder, her face glowing with happiness. "Yes, please come, Maya. It would mean a lot to us." I looked at Leo Vance, standing in my doorway, smiling politely while his eyes were still wary and suspicious. It was truly bizarre. In my last life, after Leo and I got married, he never once mentioned his childhood sweetheart, let alone went back to see her. So, in this life, I assumed that once he got back together with Sophie, he would disappear from my life. But instead, he brought her here, moved into my building, and was now personally inviting me to their engagement party. He kept showing up in my life, yet every time he did, he looked at me with that same guarded expression, as if he was afraid I was going to do something to Sophie. I honestly couldn't figure it out. Forcing a smile, I said, "I've been really busy lately. If the party is in the next few days, I might not be able to make it." As I spoke, I took the invitation. "But still, I wish you both a lifetime of happiness together." Sophie gave me a slightly shy smile. "Thank you. I hope you find someone wonderful soon, too." She seemed to have no ill intentions, so my smile became a little more genuine. That's how a normal person would react. Getting engaged to the person you've loved for years and receiving a sincere blessing should make you happy. But not Leo. The smile he had been wearing vanished, his brows knitted together slightly as if something was wrong. After a moment of silence, his gaze shifted to my face, his eyes full of doubt, as if he was trying to figure out if I was being sincere. The moment I felt that probing look, the disgust in my heart grew stronger. But seeing how happy Sophie was, I couldn't say anything in front of her. After they left, I was so annoyed that I took my golden retriever for a long walk to clear my head. When I got back and was waiting for the elevator, I ran into Leo by himself. He looked at me for a moment before saying, "I feel like there's been a real distance between us lately." Without changing my expression, I bent down to pick up a toy my puppy had dropped. "That's normal," I replied calmly. "We're not in college anymore. We've all graduated and started our own lives." Leo stared at me, searching my face. When he saw no trace of emotion, a flicker of irritation crossed his eyes. "Even if we've moved on, that doesn't mean we can't be friends," he said, clearly annoyed. I couldn't hold back any longer. "Friends? The kind of friend who used to have a crush on you, and after finding out you're engaged, is now going to be accused of causing trouble for your fiancé. Is that the kind of friend you mean?" For days, I couldn't understand Leo's strange behavior, but now, after he complained about our distance and insisted we could still be friends, I finally got it. He wanted it both ways. He wanted to be with Sophie, the girl he'd loved for years, but he also wanted to keep the familiar connection he had with me. And at the same time, he was afraid I would resent Sophie, so he kept watching me like a hawk. My stomach churned. I looked at him with a coldness I had never shown him before. "Leo, what exactly do you think I am to you? And what is Sophie to you?" The Leo I used to know was hardworking and admirable. My dad had always praised him. I had liked him for those qualities. But now, looking at the man in front of me, all I felt was disgust. I realized that no matter how impressive someone seems, if they have a flawed character, they lose all their appeal. Leo hadn't expected me to say that. His face turned pale and his expression soured. He frowned and said, "Maya, we've known each other for so long. Is that really what you think of me?" I almost laughed. "If it's not true, then why did you bring Sophie all the way here to buy an apartment in my building? If it's not true, why do you keep looking at me with those suspicious eyes, like you're just waiting for me to make a scene with her? You really think I'm still so hung up on you that I'm going to take it out on her, don't you?" I hadn't said anything before because I didn't want to upset Sophie, but Leo's constant, unsettling behavior was too much. Now that she wasn't here, I let it all out. Leo's face darkened. His voice was low. "I just didn't want you to be alone. I thought if I lived nearby, I could help you if you needed it. That way, your father could rest in peace. Is that so wrong?" I stared at him, completely fed up. "You don't need to move in next door to help someone." I wasn't moved by his words at all. "I'm an adult. I can live my life just fine on my own. If anything, it's your constant guarded looks that make me uncomfortable." When the elevator arrived, I stepped inside and left him with one last thought. There aren't that many people trying to steal you away. If you're going to get engaged to Sophie, then be fully committed to her. And if you can't, then let her go before it's too late. He didn't say anything. His face was dark, but I didn't need an answer from him. In my past life, right before I died, I had felt guilty toward Leo. I believed that if it weren't for me, he would have been with Sophie. But thinking about it now, I must have been crazy. My family had helped him for years, genuinely supported him. No one forced him to marry me. If he didn't want to, but felt he had to repay our kindness, he could have just given back the money and been done with it. That was his choice. Instead, he agreed to the marriage without ever telling me the truth. And when he started to regret it, he blamed it all on me, as if he had no part in it. This time, I had already stepped aside to let him be with the person he loved. And what did he do? He moved in next door just to make things complicated. The truth was, he didn't respect me, and he didn't love Sophie as much as he claimed. I suspected the person Leo loved most was himself. Leo didn't go home right away. He came over to my apartment and stood outside my door for a long time without knocking. He admitted to himself that the idea of me once having a crush on him did make him feel strange, but he believed his reason for moving nearby wasn't entirely selfish. I was a woman living alone. Who knew when I might need help? My father, Mr. Hayes, had done so much for him. Even if Leo wasn't going to marry me as his dying wish suggested, he couldn't just abandon me. Sophie had always been understanding. She wouldn't mind if he helped me out sometimes. That's what Leo told himself. That's why he moved here. He wanted to explain this to me, but after pacing back and forth, he couldn't bring himself to knock. He knew I misunderstood him, and he figured I wouldn't listen anyway. As he stood there, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Sophie. A picture of a home-cooked meal with the caption, "Dinner's ready. When are you coming back?" Leo frowned, feeling an instinctual annoyance. After a moment, he turned and went downstairs. When he got home, Sophie greeted him with a big smile. "You're back. Go wash your hands and try what I made." Leo gave a flat reply and sat down at the table. He took a bite of the vegetables Sophie had cooked. She looked at him expectantly. "How is it?" But Leo was still thinking about how to fix things with me and just mumbled, "It's fine." Sophie noticed his lack of enthusiasm, and a flash of disappointment crossed her face, but she quickly recovered. "I bought these fresh at the market. They were a bit expensive, but worth it, right?" She chattered on, sharing details about her day. But the longer she talked, the more irritated Leo became. In the past, Sophie's stories were carefree and fun. Now she just sounded like everyone else, rambling about boring things. He didn't want to hear it. He glanced at her oversized t-shirt and let his annoyance slip out. "You're getting engaged soon. You should buy some nicer clothes. Learn to dress up a bit. If you don't know how, ask Maya. She can teach you." Sophie's voice trailed off. She heard the criticism in his tone and felt a sting of hurt. Leo didn't notice. He was looking at his phone, and his eyes lit up when he saw a picture of a beautiful bracelet. He was sure I would like it. If I show up with this, he thought, maybe she'll finally listen to me. He had no idea that across the table, Sophie was staring at him with growing disappointment. Because I was so annoyed with Leo, I didn't leave my apartment at all the next day. "Maya, are you home?" I was surprised to hear Sophie Harper's voice at my door. I thought Leo had brought her over again, but when I checked the security camera on my phone, I saw she was alone. I got up and opened the door. Sophie gave me a slightly awkward smile and handed me a container of fresh strawberries. She was usually so cheerful, but today she seemed reserved. "Maya, besides Leo, you're the only person I know here. Is it okay if I come in and talk for a minute?" I didn't dislike her. It was Leo's selfish attitude I couldn't stand. Since he wasn't with her, I had no reason to say no. "Of course, come in and sit down," I said. Sophie smiled and came inside. I poured her a glass of water and was about to ask what was on her mind when she spoke first. "I've decided not to marry Leo." Her words stunned me. I froze for a second. Remembering Leo's character, I was about to smile and tell her she made the right choice, but I stopped myself. "I heard you two grew up together," I said carefully, "and that you waited all these years for him to come back for you. Are you sure about this?" Of course, I was happy for her, but they had a long history. I didn't want to say too much, only for her to change her mind and blame me later. It seemed Sophie understood my hesitation. She smiled gently. "We do have a long history, but I've made up my mind. We were both poor back then, and we promised each other we'd work hard and be happy together. But people change. Leo isn't that same boy who had to fight for everything anymore. Sometimes I don't even know what he's talking about, and he doesn't seem to care to listen to me. If it's like this now, what would it be like after we're married?" She spoke calmly and clearly. Seeing how serious she was, I finally felt at ease. If you've really thought it through, then that's what matters. Someone like Leo isn't worth marrying anyway. I had been worried she might back down, but she clearly saw the situation for what it was. A man like Leo, who wanted everything, didn't deserve either of us. Sophie looked at me, her eyes crinkling into a small smile. Honestly, I came by today because I was worried he might try to win you over after I left. But seeing your reaction, I know he doesn't have a chance. I couldn't help but laugh softly at that. I was about to say something else when there was a knock on the door, followed by that familiar, annoying voice. Maya, yesterday was a misunderstanding. Please give me a chance to explain. I glanced at Sophie. She rolled her eyes toward the door. When she saw me looking, she pointed to the bedroom and whispered, "Can I hide in there?" I thought for a moment and nodded. Since we both knew what Leo was really like, we might as well hear what he had to say. If he said anything out of line, we could confront him together. Once Sophie was hidden, I opened the door. The moment Leo saw me, he opened a small gift box and held it out. "I saw this bracelet online and thought of you. I knew you'd like it. Try it on." I didn't even look at the bracelet. I looked him straight in the eye and asked coldly, "Why are you here again? I thought I made myself clear yesterday." He heard the rejection in my voice. The smile on his face faded and he sighed, his expression turning pained. "Maya," he said, "I know you heard that conversation between me and your dad at the hospital. Yes, I agreed to marry you to take care of you for him, but you also knew I had someone else in my heart. That person was Sophie. We grew up together and I promised to marry her. When you turned me down, I was honestly relieved," he continued. "But your dad was my mentor and I gave him my word. I couldn't just leave you alone. Don't worry, Sophie has a great personality. If you ever need help, you can ask her. She won't mind." Leo kept talking, his expression sincere. But the moment he started, I knew he had heard what I'd said at the cemetery. I found him ridiculous. Back then, when I was crying by myself, he hadn't said a word of comfort. Now he was bringing it up, trying to act like he cared. I gave him a sharp, mocking smile. "Leo, do you actually think it's noble to try and find a perfect balance between two women?" He flinched at my sarcasm, his face stiffening. "Maya, can't you stop twisting my good intentions? Everything I did, wasn't it for you?" "No," I snapped. "Everything you did was to satisfy your own selfish needs." At that moment, Sophie walked out of the bedroom, her expression cold and full of contempt. Leo turned, shocked, looking from her to me, his face turning pale. A moment ago, he had sounded so righteous, but the second he saw Sophie, all his confidence disappeared. I sneered. "If I ever have a problem, I'll figure it out myself. And even if I did want a man's help, it certainly wouldn't be from someone who already has a girlfriend." Sophie quickly added, "Not anymore. I'm breaking up with him. He doesn't have a girlfriend now, but even if he's single, a guy like him doesn't deserve you." Our words hit him one after another. Leo's face was dark with fury. He glared at me, then turned to Sophie. "Sophie, even if you're angry, you can't be this reckless. We've already sent out the engagement invitations. Everyone knows." But Sophie wasn't having it. She laughed scornfully. "I don't care who you sent invitations to. You look down on me because I don't know how to dress. You think I'm easy to fool. If I marry you, I'll regret it for the rest of my life." With that, she walked past him and pushed him out the door. "Get out, you worthless man." Leo was stunned that she was serious. He panicked and tried to follow her, but Sophie turned and slapped him hard across the face before running down the stairs. I let out a cold laugh and looked at him standing there in shock. "Serves you right," I said, and slammed the door in his face. A few minutes later, I saw Sophie dragging a suitcase out of the building. It looked like she had already packed her things. My phone started buzzing nonstop with messages from Leo. I didn't even read them, I just blocked his number. Leo cared a lot about his reputation. After what Sophie and I said to him, I figured he'd be too embarrassed to show his face around here again. But I had underestimated his shamelessness. The next morning, as soon as I opened my door, he was there, standing in the hallway, looking completely defeated. I jumped, startled. When I realized it was him, I blurted out, "What is wrong with you?" He looked genuinely hurt by my reaction. He stepped forward, then stopped when he saw the warning in my eyes. His face was full of pain and regret as he said in a hoarse voice, "Maya, I know you came back too. What happened last time was my fault. I thought I loved Sophie, but I was wrong. The person I really love is you." There was a strange look in his eyes. He didn't look like someone who had just realized this. He looked like someone who had just remembered something, as if he had regained the memories from our past life. "Can you give me one more chance, Maya?" he asked quietly. "Just one chance to make it right." When I didn't answer, he hesitated, trying to find the right words. But I had already collected myself. I looked at him, my expression calm and empty. I was surprised he remembered our past life, but that was it, nothing more. "No, Leo, you were the one who begged me to let you be with the person you truly loved. I respected that. I let you go. Now you regret it and you think that has anything to do with me?" My voice was like ice. "Why should I give you another chance?" He panicked, clearly wanting to plead his case, but I cut him off. "You're the kind of person who is always full of regret, never satisfied. I will never, ever give you another chance. So you should get over it and stop bothering me. If you don't, I'll tell everyone in the alumni group what you've done." That hit him where it hurt. Leo cared more about his reputation than anything else. The thought of public humiliation made him shrink back. After a long, bitter look, he finally turned and walked away, looking miserable and defeated. It was pathetic. There was never much love between us to begin with, yet he was trying to act like he couldn't live without me. Disgusting. I rolled my eyes and went back inside. The next day, I heard that Leo had already sold his apartment. Then a message from an unknown number appeared on my phone. "Maya, I hope you stay healthy and happy." I didn't even have to guess who sent it. I deleted it and blocked the number. Then I bent down and gave my golden retriever a good, long scratch as he wiggled happily around my legs. Leo really had nothing better to do with his time.